I'm not an environmental activist, I'm an artist, and when I say that, normally in front of a group of people looking up at me, it's almost as though I'm at an AA meeting declaring an addiction. But in reality, for me, it's really, I guess, what we are is part of a larger concept. I always remember John Donne's poem that said, whatever happens changes our world. And I remember when I was working on the project in Vancouver Biennale as part of the project, and we were completing the Blue Tree project, and as we were completing it, I put all the paints and colorants had been put away, and I was sitting looking at the blue tree when a mother and daughter came walking towards the blue tree from the other side of the area. And as she came closer to it, the little girl broke away from her mother and started running towards the tree, going, blue tree, and she came to it and gave it a huge hug, and it was a great magical moment for me. And I'd realised, of course, that that little girl and her mother had walked that path many, many times before, but in this instance, she had seen the trees. In another part of the world, in Melbourne, Australia, a group of youths went into a public park and cut down a number of old trees, and some of these trees were over 100 years old. And given that Australia is only 200 years old, it was a huge, I think, horrific attack. And what I realised in this incident that those youths did not see the trees, they did not see them as living entities. Whereas the little girl was open to the imagination, open to mystery, and open to bewilderment, that door had closed for those children, and all that came out was this ugliness and violence. The blue trees, of course, there are no blue trees, I don't have to tell you that. Blue trees do not exist. They only exist in my imagination and in the imagination of those who are open to mystery, open to bewilderment. I've created through the blue trees a surreal environment that exists for a very short period of time, and through that surreal environment, I guess what frightens me is that one day that surreal environment may become a reality. I remember in the 1960s when Joni Mitchell wrote a song that went, they cut down all the trees and put them in the tree museum, and you paid $1.50 just to see them. I won't sing it for you, but part of that whole aspect was that I actually very recently went to a tree museum or a botanical museum, and there I actually saw, or that they showed me, seeds of trees that no longer existed in nature. They existed in catalogue boxes. And to me that was quite frightening, that from the imagination of a wonderful singer-songwriter to a box in 35 years, to me it was frightening. So the imagination is a powerful tool, and I feel really soon after that an article in the paper that said, "Can art save the world?" And I felt very strongly that art had a potential to actually not only change the way we see the world, but the way we think about it and we act towards it. It opens up our imagination. And so for me, I wanted to develop art that actually, my art in a way to actually showcase issues that interest me, that I felt were valuable in changing things. Soon after that, my family and I moved to Melbourne, Australia from New Zealand. And when we were, I guess, when we moved there, one thing we noticed was it's very similar to Sacramento, California. It's an amazingly tree city. It has a lot of trees and urban forests. And but what I realized is the passion that people have for their own trees, the passion and engagement that they have, does not kind of relate to the old growth forests, which are disappearing at an incredible rate. And their invisibility, and part of that invisibility has to do with distance. But in order for me to get people to see the forest, I had to actually get the trees visible. And I thought the best way to do it is actually to use a colour that was unnaturally, that didn't relate to trees as such. Trees in nature, blue is not a colour that is that comes on very often. Interesting enough, Greenpeace in the 1980s used a blue dye to colour the seal pups blue to stop their fur being killed, and that was a very successful way to actually use art in some way to actually stop the slaughter. I guess the main aspect of the blue trees is, and the main question it raises is, can art save the world? And I believe it can. I believe that art has the potential and power to change the way our world, but it really needs a global raising of hands. And I think what happens today with the TED talks with a variety of people, I think it can happen, but it needs that action. For me, it would be it's a huge tragedy if it would be a huge tragedy if these amazing, beautiful, mysterious ecosystems disappeared from the face of the earth. It would be a tragedy of Greek proportions if these incredibly beautiful, mysterious trees and forests disappeared. I think Einstein said it best when he said the most beautiful things we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and all of science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. His eyes are closed. And I'm hoping that this project at least opens some eyes. Thank you very much.